I acknowledge myself as Wiccan and identify as Wiccan.
I became Wiccan. I was introduced to Wicca by a friend of mine.
I am a practicing Wiccan. I am a founding member of the Pagan Forum at Carthage College. My name is Sage Calhoun. I go to Carthage College.
My name is Max Dinan. I'm a sophomore here at Carthage.
My name is Josh Ham. I'm the Vice President of Pagan Forum here at Carthage College. Pagan Forum is a group that we started more or less to clear up some of the misconceptions about Wicca and pagan religions in general.
Pagan Forum is a group that I started on campus last year. That basically our goal and our aim is to discuss what the pagan religions are, mainly Wicca, but any religion that would fall under the pagan umbrella, and to get information out there, facilitate discussion between interested people, whether they be practicing pagans or not, and to sort of change the stigmas that are out there in the public about what paganism really is and what it means, and to sort of change people's opinions about it, or at the very least to inform them about what it is. It's hard to describe what Wicca is to a lot of people because you can describe what you believe or what your coven follows, but if you talk to 5 different Wiccans, you'll tend to get 5 different descriptions.
I think a lot of the core belief of Wicca has to do with the threefold law, first of all, which is if you do something, it's going to come back at you 3 times for good or for bad. It's a similar idea to karma.
And as far as our philosophical beliefs, the Wiccan read, the full Wiccan read, if you can get a chance to read it, is definitely good. But the shortened version that everybody knows and pull out of their pocket is, add it and harm none, do what thou wilt. And that's ultimately philosophically what it comes down to.
There technically is not a religious text. There is the Wiccan Reed, which is a poem that was written kind of to encompass the beliefs of a lot of different Wiccans. It can be very long or very short.
There's a god and a goddess, and each one has their own symbology, each one has their own kind of aspect to them, but at the same time, they're much like the yin and yang, they don't ever come separate.
Because there are some that believe that deity is one, just big, male, female, all-encompassing being. They're symbols of the male and female side of a greater, unanimous whole. A bigger spiritual being that doesn't really have a name, it doesn't have a gender, it doesn't have all those qualities that we would necessarily associate with a specific god and goddess. In Wicca, it's generally understood that the wheel of the year is the life cycle of the god. So at Samhain, which is the new year, which is Halloween, the god dies, and then he's reborn at Yule of the goddess, so she gives birth to him. And then as the year progresses, he grows older, and the god and the goddess, mate, and she becomes pregnant with the god. It's not meant to be a literal thing. It's just an explanation for the seasons. It's more of a symbolic thing. There are holidays. There are 8 Sabbats having to do with the equinoxes, the solstices, and then there are 4 that kind of correspond with the life of the god. There will be covens, or there will be groups of individuals that just come together for holidays, and they'll party, they'll have, they'll drink, they'll eat, they'll have big ceremonies. Again, I don't have contact with that, so I don't do that. For me, it's really simple. I'll just usually have like a little meal that usually is something seasonal. I'm kind of bad at practicing, especially since I've come to college. It's really hard, especially because there's like no candles, no incense, that's tough. And at home I'll use incense a lot and I'll use candles a lot, but I'm also really big into gemstones.
Gemstones in Wicca are used for a variety of purposes, from divination to healing to using them in satchels or various spells or potions.
Magic could be comparable to prayer. It could be, it's sort of, it's sending out a message or a plea or a request or a thank you or anything like that to the powers that be, which in the case of Wicca is a god and a goddess in most cases. It's very comparable to any worship service at a Christian church or at a Jewish synagogue or what have you. Asking for help in times of struggle and thanking the powers that be when they help you. Another thing is just, it's not the sort of magic that you often see in those sort of movies where things are levitating or transforming into things or things like that. It's, like I said, it's much more along the lines of prayer, where you're asking for help in everyday tasks or in lifetime goals or things like that.
Frequently I end up by myself when I do practice. I try to catch a full moon if I can, but obviously that's not always the case. Sometimes you just have a big project you're working on that day or something like that, and you just don't have a chance to. But what I do try to do is anytime that I have multiple people who are Wiccan, I try to gather them together and get something going.
I practice independently, partially because covens aren't necessarily easy to find in a place like Kenosha, but also because I prefer the individualistic approach. I prefer the fact that I can sort of write my own rules for it to a point.
Those in a coven generally have to kind of all agree. It's usually a smaller number, less than 10. You usually have a high priest and a high priestess who kind of run the meetings, and everyone kind of has to be on the same page with what they believe. It's almost like a church in a sense, where everyone kind of is on the same page. One thinks of the goth kid who wants to rebel against their Christian parents.
A lot of what you see in the media is remnants of, it sounds very cliche, but sort of remnants of like the Salem witch trial ideology of witches. Black pointed hats, cackling warts, bubbling cauldrons.
There's a lot of confusion regarding what exactly is done. I mean, it's not all about dancing around the fire and all of that.
We have no belief in the devil or any sort of supreme evil being, so it doesn't make sense for any of us to be worshiping that being.
At a Halloween party, it was on Halloween, October 31st. We set up food, we set up some orange lights, some cobwebs, little fake spiders and little skeletons on the table, and little just plastic doodads, candy everywhere. We bobbed for apples and watched Hocus Pocus, and danced a little bit to some Halloween music, the Monster Mash and things like that. It was your pretty typical Halloween party. No goat slaughtering, nobody's head on a pike, nothing like that. I mean, that's generally frowned upon.
If anything, I just want to see it better understood and more widely accepted. That people can truly understand what's going on here, and that people will be able to, that if you can tell somebody, you can tell your family and your friends that you're Wiccan without being worried. If I had any goal for Wicca, that would probably be it. Just that people can learn to understand it and accept it for the inherently good religion that it is.